Plan Subcommittee meeting. The emergency procedures are on the screen in front of you. I'll just confirm that live stream is now with us. Welcome to those of you on the live stream, and we'll start with our opening karakia. Te tuia. There are no apologies that have been received. Item 2, public comment, understanding orders. I move that public comment is extended to 40 minutes to allow speakers to be heard, and speakers will have 2 minutes to speak, and if the full allocation is used, there will be no questions from members. Is there a seconder?
Quick point of order, if the speaker is within the 2 minutes and we've got time, we can ask a question.
Yes. Councillor Tonga Grant, second. The motion, I now put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed? Okay, welcome everybody. First up, Transition Towns, Lower Hutt, Bruce Anderson and Pam Crisp. Welcome, Bruce. Pam, you okay with the technology?
We'll see. I'm sorry, did I hear 2 minutes? Right. Okay, thanks for the opportunity. I'm Bruce Anderson, Treasurer of the Transition Towns Lower Hutt, and we've been running the Allistown Community Centre since 2019. 2 things for me to say. Community is safe, convenient to buses, accessible, comfortable, private and cheap. And a $9,000, well, this might seem like an encouragement to demolish the centre, a $9,000 charge recovery is very hard to cope with. We may have to double or even triple the user charges for it if that is issued. But I'll hand over to Pam, our co-coordinator.
Morena tātou, thanks for the opportunity. Speaking on behalf of Guy, some of you will know he runs Forage, a beautiful shop down in Allistown. Guy's words, like others in this room, I was heartbroken to see the centre lost to fire. It's not only the loss of the building, it's the loss of a daily presence that helped hold our neighbourhood together. A lot of my customers were the centre's members, volunteers, old and young. The centre brought steady, reliable foot traffic that small business depends on, and its absence is already being felt in quieter streets and fewer familiar faces. But the true value of the community centre can't be measured only in economic terms. It was a place where people who might otherwise be isolated found connection. It was a place of positivity, belonging and sharing, as many of you know. It provided a focal point that turned a collection of houses into a community. As a neighbouring business, we saw firsthand how those intangible benefits translated into a stronger, more resilient local economy. When people feel connected to a place, they choose to shop locally, support local services and look out for one another. The centre was a catalyst for that sense of belonging. Rebuilding it is not simply replacing what was lost, it's investing in social infrastructure that keeps neighbourhoods healthy, safe and economically viable. I urge you to refund the rebuild so that Allistown can once again have its gathering place. I used to call it a marae, a space that supports people first and through that sustains the businesses that serve them. Thank you for your consideration and your work. Thank you.
Well done, Guy.
Well done, Guy.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Pam. Sylvia, Alan. Welcome, Sylvia.
Thank you. I'll just go straight to it because time's been cut. I think you've got my handout, and I also apologise that I have to leave straight after this. So I wanted to talk about 3 things particularly. The loss of good faith with the community if funding is cut for the wharf. When the council allocated 12 million for wharf repair, people were rapt. The council had actually listened and finally made a decision for the widest community. Council has continued to act in good faith as the early project stages proceeded. They consulted with the Save Petone Wharf and potential constructors before engaging one of the best engineers in Wellington to work with officers and come up with a value for money approach. It sought costed registrations of interest, so both the feasibility and cost of the repairs have been checked. The early investigations have been done in exemplary fashion and shared with community representatives. Together, a way was worked out to obtain early consents so the work could commence. This is in line with the council's active engagement community outcome. Now, at exactly the time that the project was to be advertised for tender, it was paused and may be cancelled. It's a huge slap in the face for us and our commitment. Please honour your long-term plan and the community relationships around it. Secondly, there's a lot of misinformation in the agenda reports, and I've set them out. I won't go through them, but misinformation about engineering and ongoing costs, and the omission is that there's no recognition of the heritage values of the wharf, and that's a risk issue for the council, which hasn't been recognised. Over the page, I've been set out some information about Petone and how we feel that we have been underinvested in. I won't deal with that, but I'll go to my last paragraph, which is, finally, I would like to say that the community does have some potential remedies if wharf funding is rejected or delayed. It's not a favoured option, but it does exist. I've been very closely involved in last year's Civic Trust judicial review against the City Council's decision to demolish the City to Sea Bridge. The decision was reversed this month and repair work is now being done. For Petone Wharf, if the Council's earlier unanimous decision to commit to its repair and opening is reversed, a very good judicial review case could be made based on the wharf's heritage status, its current vulnerable and closed condition, and previous community consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a question, please, of the Speaker?
Barbara Scott.
This good? Are we good? Okay, I'll make it quick for the overrun. Kia ora koutou, ko Barbara tōku ingoa. Appreciate the time today. Thank you for responding personally to me, Mayor Laban and Tui, from my earlier email this week. I sit here as representing my whānau. We've enjoyed the Petone Beach and the amenities over the last 20 plus years. We'd like to see this very important recreational asset available, retained for the community. Some of the things that we've enjoyed is wharf jumping. It's a rite of passage for all New Zealanders. I swear I'll never pop in manu again. That was a mistake, but you know, to enable other people to have that available to them. I also went down a couple of years ago to talk to the fisher folk down at the Pipe Bridge, to talk to them about you know, how they're using the bridge as an asset or as a resource to feed their whānau, and they were all very supportive of the wharf being available to them as a resource to do that as well. And then there's actually just the sheer spectacle of being at the end of that wharf, looking around, doing a 360, looking out across the moana, up at the sky, the clouds, the whenua, and how that just is very invigorating to the wairua. So Brady, Naomi, Tui, Chris, Simon, Kerry, Andy, Glenda, Tony, you all committed to this last time. I implore you to do it, not only for the Petone community, the wider Hutt community, but also for the wider Wellington region. Save the wharf. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Nice call out. Helen Swales. Thank you. Morena, Councillor Swales.
Morning, Your Worship and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you on paid parking in Petone today. Small to medium businesses across the country have faced extraordinary circumstances over recent years. A pandemic that no central or local government modelling anticipated, significant compliance changes that have steadily eroded margins, increased insurances of between 10 and 45%, rising utility costs, supply chain pressures and wage growth. As business leaders, you understand this. These costs have either had to be absorbed, cutting into those tight margins, or passed on to customers at a time when household budgets are under strain. Against the backdrop of the introduction of paid parking on Jackson Street has a profound impact on many of our businesses. We will share with you examples of reduced turnover, shorter visits and flow-on effects to hospitality. Parking has become part of the decision about whether to visit Petone or not. We were grateful to the relief in December 2024. We saw a lift in foot traffic and a renewed vibrancy on the street that demonstrate what is possible. However, while visitor numbers increased, average spend per customer was down, reflecting the reduced disposable income many families are experiencing. We value the 35-year partnership that we've had as a program with this council. That partnership has been built on collaboration and shared success that we want to continue. We surveyed our businesses on the options that you have before us. The response was very clear and overwhelming. Support for option 2A, providing a 30-minute of free parking. We believe that with a positive, well-promoted campaign, we can reduce the projected revenue impacts identified by officers. We are not here simply to oppose. We are here to work with you towards a practical, balanced solution, one that supports business sustainability while recognising the council's responsibility. We look forward to continuing this partnership and finding a win-win outcome for Petone. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Swales. John Roper, who's joining us online. Kia ora, John.
Kia ora, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make it brief. Tēnā koe, everyone. Mayor Laban, kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning on an issue very dear to my heart. My name is John Roper, and in a nutshell, I love Petone. I've been a resident all my life and have been a business owner for more than 50 years. I have played for and been president of the Petone Rugby Club and for the last several years part of the Save Petone Wharf movement. As you will have gathered, I'm here today to impress you on the importance of the future of the wharf. The structure is not just a collection of planks and pilings, it is the soul of our foreshore and a landmark that defines the identity of Lower Hutt. The wharf is steeped in history. For over a century, it has stood as the gateway to the Wellington Harbour, serving as a reminder to our industrial roots and enduring connection to the Moana, and it is one of the most iconic and photographed structures in the region. An architectural signature that tells the story of Petone to every visitor who visits and walks our beach. On any given day, the wharf is a hub of activity, and the images I'm showing you just today give you a taste of what it could be. It's a favourite spot for local fishers, a rite of passage for teenagers, and the odd adult jumping into the harbour on a sunny afternoon. It provides a unique space for residents to clear their heads, enjoy the salt air, take the unparalleled views of the city and harbour. And it serves as a meeting point for families, cornerstone of the Petone lifestyle that attracts people to live and visit our suburb. With respect, I wish to remind the council that there was a previously agreed upon position to restore the wharf. Our community trusted that this commitment would be honoured. Whilst we are not privy to all the detail around the current council discussions and know you are under immense pressure to be all things to all people, retracting that promise now would not only be a loss of heritage, but a significant breach of public trust. We appreciate you're a new council, but would hope the prior commitment stands the test of time. Whilst I acknowledge the costs of restoration, I would hope that we could look at the long-term value of a heritage site. Demolition is an expensive, permanent option that leaves us with nothing but a gap in our skyline. By contrast, investing in the repairs is an investment in our tourism, our local economy, and our civic pride. This will become more obvious as the two major cycleways projects come to fruition. The potential for the wharf is immense. Beyond simple restoration, we could imagine a revitalised space that incorporates enhanced seating and lighting, educational plaques detailing the history of the iwi and early settlers, an incredible connection to the new Tiara Tupuia, and in the future, possible ferry links, ecotourism, etc. In summary, Petone Wharf is irreplaceable. Once it is gone forever. I urge you to look beyond the immediate budget cycle and recognise the intergenerational value of the structure. Please vote to save, restore and celebrate Petone Wharf. Ngā mihi nui, and again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, John. Pam Henna.
Tala whalawa mea Laban, kia ora
Talofa.
koutou councillors. Is it on? Yep, it is, yep. We believe that only option 1 can be agreed to today for Petone Wharf because that's what has been unanimously agreed to by 9 of you twice over already. And that is what, as John has just said, the community in good faith thinks what is going to happen. Do you really want to have a fight about the wharf again or spend more money debating it than a lot of the repair will cost? The community's been going through this for nearly a decade. And I want to particularly look back to 9 years ago when this group of Wolford students came along and made a submission about saving the wharf. They're now second-year university students. Last year or the year before, some current Wolford students came and made a further plea. You may remember their posters. They illustrate the varied ages of wharf supporters. It's not only older people like me, but how many generations of students do we need to go through to get the wharf repaired? Then after the years of indecision, we finally got to a position where we got certainty. It was a compromise on all sides, but we all made it work. We have worked with council in good faith and feel that any trust that has been built up is in danger of being lost. I acknowledge there are financial pressures, but in reality, the budget for the wharf's not going to have a huge impact. If you back down now, how can anyone or any organisation have faith in council decisions? You could get a worse name than central government if you do a U-turn and stir up a whole heap of resentment. And I'm sure that's not anyone's intention, but that would be the result. As now Deputy Mayor Carey said in 2025 about the wharf, there is a common goal. We all have a mutual goal. We have agreed by way of where we've got to, and I look forward to the next step. Each step is critical. We need to step back to what was agreed to and budgeted for, 12 million to repair as much of the wharf as possible and get it done now. Whakamura, whakamuri. Look back to look forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Dr. Roger Blakely.
Kia ora mai tātou. I'm Roger Blakely. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. First of all, I'd like to explain why I'm here. My background is that I've had a career as a public servant at chief executive level, mainly in central and local government. I also was on the Greater Wellington Regional Council for 6 years, serving with Mayor Ken. And by profession, I'm a civil engineer. I have a PhD in civil engineering from the University of Canterbury in earthquake engineering, and I'm a distinguished fellow of Engineering New Zealand. So 2 years ago, my colleagues Pam Hanna and Sylvia Allen asked if I'd join the Save Petone Wharf group to add my engineering knowledge to the group. So I'd like to suggest 4 reasons why I would recommend that you decide to repair and reopen the Petone Wharf today. First, the technology we identified 2 years ago of repairing deteriorated piles in situ, in site, is now widespread across the world and regarded as best practice internationally, and it's much cheaper than traditional methods. Secondly, the previous council's decision voted unanimously to get as much of the Petone Wharf as possible repaired within the $12 million funding cap in the council's long-term plan 2024-34 was a good decision. That third, I've read Adam Thornton's report and I think it's excellent. He advised you that most of the wharf could be retained, remediated and strengthened to 40% of the national building standard for earthquake resistance, or could be done within the $12 million cap. And I think that's a good outcome. Fourth, the advice you got from your officers in April 2025 was a further delay of 2 to 3 years without action is not acceptable. Over that period, the wharf will deteriorate further, resulting in further costs and further endangering this listed heritage structure. The Petone Wharf is clearly a much-loved community asset. You can see that from the people who are here today. People enjoy fishing and jumping and walking and fishing off the wharf. You have an excellent proposal from Adam Thornton. I recommend respectfully that you agree to proceed to repair and reopen the Petone Wharf today. Kia ora mai tātou.
Thank you, Dr. Blackley. Christine Hanks.
Kia ora koutou, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm Christine Hanks. I've lived in Petone for 26 years. I own a small business there, and I'm a member of the Petone Community Association. I'm very concerned that you now appear to be reneging on your decision to reopen and repair Petone Wharf. Kate, can we play the video I sent through, please?
What do we want? Save our wall! Hundreds marching down Petone Beach. Come on, everybody! And dancing in front of the closed wharf, all in efforts to save it from demolition.
We should be able to be out there using it.
Why do you want it to be saved?
So I can walk animals and go fishing. Because we can do manus off it.
This community fighting for its wharf in the hope of seeing more scenes like this. Abby Wakefield, One News.
What do we want? As you can see, in 2024, the Petone community clearly expressed what their wishes were in regard to the wharf, and a petition containing nearly 8,000 signatures were gathered. You subsequently made a commitment to save the wharf, and yet here we are again, seemingly back at square one, being told there needs to be further consultation. Well, consultation has already happened, and the community has spoken loudly and clearly. Why are you now not listening? I understand the financial pressure local councils are under. I also understand you need to invest to support economic development. Petone Wharf is an asset and should be treated as such. It's a focal point for the Petone community. It was a well-used structure and supported healthy pastimes of people walking and fishing. It is iconic to Petone. Please don't demolish our much-loved wharf.
Thank you, Christine. Brian Pike.
Good morning, I'm Brian Pike. I'm a Petone businessman. I'm talking about the wharf, and I'm also going to talk about parking. So the wharf, I had understood, was a goer as far as saving it, so I'm very disappointed in having to come back again. It's good for resilience. Like this facility could be used in an earthquake ferry terminal. It's a good meeting place for people. It's a hub of the Hutt Valley, like that is Hutt Valley's only wharf. So I'm astounded that this is having to be relitigated. So that's my brief thing on the wharf. The parking in Jackson Street. I have never seen cost-benefit data. Is this actually making Hutt City money, or is it as it may have been just to allocate parking, which was seen to be fine prior to the paid parking. The only Petone is the only suburb that has paid parking. Why is that? Is it because it's a cash cow? I don't know, because I've not seen any figures. I believe that the call for free initial parking is the minimum that Jackson Street should have. Why are we doing this in Petone? Why is it the only suburb that has had paid parking? Have they realised that it is actually making money? I don't know. So I would like the council to publish figures to show that, is it making money? There's been a lot of expense installing meters, reinstalling meters, maintenance, monitoring, policing, and do they actually make any money out of it? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Brian. Karen Araj Fisher.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. So I'm Karen Araj Fisher. I'm the Secretary of the Petone Rugby Club and a lifelong Petone resident. That's 56 years. So I'm here today to talk about the grandstand. The grandstand is not just an asset for Petone. I think it needs to be looked at as a regional asset. And it's not just for Petone Rugby Club. Lots of other sports are played on Petone Rec. There could be lots of events on Petone Rec. It's very sadly missed by a lot of people. But what I want to give you is a scenario. So the Wellington Lions rugby is currently being played at Porua Park, Jerry Collins Park. We have better transport links, public transport links in Petone. We're closer to Wellington. We know this, a lot of people from Karori find it much easier to come to Petone than to go to the CBD. So we have, why can't we have the Wellington Lions playing at Petone Rec with a packed grandstand? It would be amazing. We want to bring events to Lower Hutt, to Petone. This will also be economically viable because people beforehand could shop and eat along Jackson Street. They could make a day of it, or afterwards go and eat at one of our 36 different restaurants that are open at night time, or one of our amazing bars. So I think that we're looking at this through a narrow lens, and we need to be looking at this in a bigger way, a tourism asset, a regional asset, and not just a Petone asset. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Matt Bartholomew via Zoom. Morning, Matt.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui. Hello, councillors and Mayor Ken. Thank you for having us. So just following on from Karen, I'm treasurer at the Petone Rugby Club, and 3 points today. First one is acknowledge that you're facing quite a significant financial challenge and you're stepping into that process. At a very different scale, we, the Rugby Club, are also looking at our future and what does it look like to be a sustainable sporting organisation, providing a safe environment for kids, for parents, for adults, for players, etc. I have one request of you, which is the same request we have of ourselves when we look at this challenge, which is what are the long run issues that we might create from the short-term decisions we make. In terms of the grandstand, support everything Karen said, but just add that in the recent months we've been sort of having a piecemeal discussion with the council around what the future opportunities for the grandstand are, including divestment. Our commitment from the Petone Rugby Club is we're ready to step into that discussion about divestment with a deadline to see if we can find a future for the grandstand, for the rec, that works in the interests for the community, for all sporting clubs in the region, for other community users, and for the council. The options you have in front of you today, I understand where they come from, but I'm worried that if you go forward with an option to demolish, you take some things off the table. So our request is that we step into a process to work out if there is a future for the grandstand in a divestment model. We're up for doing that at pace so that it doesn't drag on, but we think that is the better way forward so that we can do exactly what Karen said, think about the role of this asset for the community and what a future sustainable model for it looks like. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Mike Fisher.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, councillors. You've heard me many times wearing different hats on these subjects, so it's, like others have said, it is definitely a case of deja vu all over again. The wharf, we heard very eloquently from John Roper, and I won't repeat, and others, everything they've said. We fought long and hard over many years to reach the stage where we thought everything was cut and dry and progress was being made. So please, you know, don't renege now, don't turn your backs on Petone, and let's have option one and carrying on with that work that was so close to reaching the goal we all fought so long and hard for. There's definitely wider implications of the tourism aspects, etc. You know those things, so please take that into consideration. In terms of parking, there was a palpable difference in December in Petone that everybody felt, not just retailers, but also the general public. And it was covered in nationwide media in debates about other areas looking at their parking and how the reduction to free parking in December made such a difference in Petone. You could literally feel it in the air, and it was a topic of conversation. The option 2A, as I understand it, the 30 minutes free, I think would be the best option going forward. I think now there is a realisation that to go back to free parking is not going to happen, but I think taking 30 minutes and then charging upwards from then, not at the $3 level, at a lower level would be good, would be acceptable. If you're desperate for revenue, as another speaker has already said, if you're desperate for revenue, then charge the other suburbs. Put parking meters in Avalon and Eastbourne and Nainai if you're that desperate for revenue. But really, go back to what we were doing with a lower rate of fee and reach some compromise for Petone. In terms of the grandstand, my good wife and the previous speaker raised the points, you know, it is a regional asset. It is something to be looked at in a wider frame. The rugby club want to be involved in discussions. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and likewise the library. The work's underway. Please, please carry on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Justin Clark.
Good morning. As a business owner on Jackson Street, I'm not advocating for the removal of parking meters in their entirety. I understand that council has a job to gather revenue, and once those revenues are built into your long-term plans, it's very hard to unwind that. What I am advocating for is a balanced approach. In the first year, around $683,000 of parking revenue was achieved at what I've calculated at 26% utilisation across the street over 7 days. This aligns with JSP's submission of 20% utilisation on weekdays. That income came, however, with a significant downside to businesses along Jackson Street. JSP's submission references well over $1 million in lost retail revenue. Several shops have closed, jobs have been lost, and others are reassessing their future in Petone as leases come up for renewal. That includes us, and we've been on the street for 30 years. This puts council at a critical juncture. If present trends continue, retail contraction will mean fewer shops, less foot traffic, and erosion of parking revenue. Doing nothing or taking a wait-and-see approach is not neutral and carries its own risk. A smaller number of shops makes recovery much harder. People will not visit an empty street, let alone one that requires paid parking. I'm advocating for adoption of a 60-minute free period, not to reduce revenue, but to entice shoppers and businesses back and lift parking occupancy. The first hour free period will restore the number of visitors and strengthen the street overall. To maintain projected revenues forecast in the plan with 60 minutes free and $3 per hour thereafter, utilisation would need to lift from the current 26% to 38%. That level of utilisation is not unrealistic and is broadly consistent with other functioning main streets. Yes, there is a short-term risk, revenue risk of occupancy does not rebound immediately, but the greater risk is allowing continued decline, which would reduce both retail viability and council revenues over time. Rebound is still possible, as was seen in December, but we need to act now while that opportunity still exists. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Justin.
Sorry,
Rachana
Mark, I have
Saw.
a question in. The bell hasn't gone. Could you just talk briefly about the differences you saw in December with the trial running?
Yeah, so much more vibrant. I find it strange that we talk about restoring vibrancy on Jackson Street, where 24 months ago it was the most vibrant place you could imagine. Yeah, definitely more foot traffic, and our revenues did increase in line with that. More consistent with how it was before pay parking was introduced. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Rachana Saw.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Sherry, and I'm the business owner of Ruchi Indian Cuisines. I'm along here with my another business co-owner, Rachna. I'll later explain to you what has impacted on Jackson Street parking.
Hello, I'm just owner of the business, Mr. Ban Bakery Patoni. I love bakery. I start working here almost 10 years. I'm here to talk about serious impact of the pay parking in Jackson Street. I start here fully of hope for the progress, but the hope is lost again and again because the factory move and the COVID coming, and then the banks start to move one by one, even the post shop. After that, we got the rate increase, the rent increase, and now we got the pay parking FH. So the number of the employee, it have dropped down from 8 people to 3 people. It's worst ever. And I'm facing too hard for 1 year after pay parking. I have to sell my house because income not enough. So my business is going to shut down soon if you still keep increase the pressure on us. We almost empty. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Rachana. Nick Zangoro Paul Loss. Apologise to the Greek community.
Close enough, Ken.
Close enough. Cheers, Nick.
Morena tātou katoa, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My background is as a financial analyst and a business consultant, and so I've applied some standard practices to assess the impact of the paid parking on Jackson Street. The first and most critically, absolutely most critically, I've segregated out the impact of the downturn in the economy, and I'm only looking here today at the impact of paid parking, so I want to make that absolutely clear. I spoke to 102 businesses, which is 70% of the heritage precinct on the street. So the first impact that you'll see is of those 70 people extrapolated to the full street, it's about an $8 million impact. So when we said well more than $1 million, it is well more than $1 million. It's closer to $8 million for a full year impact. The second part of it is the landlords. It's difficult to assess landlord impact, but we've got 3 landlords, including myself, and one of my colleagues will speak later about the personal impact. But we assess that that's approximately a $2 million impact. Third, and most seriously of all, is the impact on workers. So the retrenchment that's been required to make up that $8 million gap has resulted in at least 100 jobs lost. We don't know exactly what that is on a full-time basis because many of them are part-time, but it's probably about 50 plus and possibly significantly more. So it's also worth noting, if you go to the next slide, that part of that impact is actually from the, or not part, a significant part of that impact is actually from the fining regime. So if you look at that slide, the last 3 months will show you that fully 60% of the revenue that was generated for the council was from fines, which is absolutely horrific. And I can tell you that when I talk to those 70 people, quite a lot of them mentioned to me that the fining regime is killing them. People are basically getting fined and saying to the vendor, I'm never coming back to the street. And I heard that several times. So please, can we reconsider that at some point? So collectively, we've got a $12 million impact on the street. Now, under any public policy regime, any public policy analysis, that has got to be one of the worst ever benefit to cost ratios. So please consider that too. So just, I basically said what I wanted to say, but I just also want to end on a positive note to thank Mayor Ken and CE Joe for the relief in December. That was extremely worthwhile. And just in closing, please, Jackson Street is a precious taonga. Don't ruin it. Ngā mihi.
Thank you, Nick. Shane Thurston.
Kia ora koutou. I'm not Shane Thurston. Shane's unwell and unable to attend. My name's Robbie Schneider, independent financial advisor, 15 years in Petone in business and a resident of the Hutt Valley for 22 years. So I'm here to talk today in my capacity on the Jackson Street board. I have been there for 12 years about the impact of paid parking, and firstly to thank all members of the council and acknowledge your contribution to the business community by allowing free parking for the month of December. It has made a significant impact. We have some slides. We have done a survey out to the business owners that have highlighted that 93% of the business owners acknowledged that they spoke to the JSP about the fact that free parking had made an impact on their business. 94% said that it has a positive effect for the month of December. So clearly, all of us make a decision when we wake up every day, whether we drive or walk to our place of work or place of worship or place of purchase. For the grandparents that are considering heading down to Jackson Street to buy a card and a present for their grandson, often they'll be taking a motor vehicle, and the daunting prospect of using Pay My Parking and the experience that has and the potential for a $70 fine, has meant that the businesses have suffered significantly. So the relief of December clearly indicated the benefits of that. What we have seen, though, is that Jackson Street's a small portion of the Hutt City, and yet it's been one of the ones that's been most significantly affected. And you'll see up here, we represent a small part of the consumer behaviour. So when we think about consumers and what do they do and how do they behave, we think about ourselves and what we do. We will take the most convenient, most easy route for ourselves to do that. And so what that means is that people are moving from Jackson Street, which is a boutique novelty specialty area, into places of more convenience where it's easier to park, the mall, the Kmarts of the world. That may not come as a bad thing, but we're trying to restore heritage, maintain small business, and stimulate and grow economy. We are obviously keen to continue working with council in a partnership arrangement from a JSP perspective, and you'll hear from one of our members about an option where we've got a revenue model where we can both grow our revenue together. That's for the business owners and for the council through a paid parking solution, which we'd like to introduce to you at a future date. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Robbie. Best to Shane if you're listening, mate. John Donnelly now.
Good morning, everybody. If you bring the slides up, I just want to talk about the actual, you've heard the impact in a dollar term, and it's easy to see why. Yeah, hi, Tui. So the what Nick put up was under the official information, Lagoima, that first line there, the first year, parking revenue excluding, not the $70 fines, but just people overstayed, was $452,593 at $3 per hour. That means there were 150,864 one-hour car parks paid for by people. Out of the next group, there's 852,640 available. So utilisation for that year was 17%. That means the car parks were empty 83% of the time. So consumers decided at $3 they didn't want to go to Jackson Street. So that was the impact, and it explains why there's such a loss of vibrancy, loss of sales and loss of jobs. We just flick over. So where does elastic demand become inelastic? We started to look, and go to the next slide, please. Oh, I've got the controls, so sorry. Yeah, so we looked at the factors. One is the horrific fines regime, but I'm going to leave that aside. The other two key factors, we believe at 30 minutes, people will come back and it will start to overcome the fines. We have to tell people it's changed. Between $1 and $1.50, I don't think people care about those prices. So if we look at what's best for the council and go to the top end, $1.50, including a transaction charge. If we flick to the next slide, if someone can do that. You only have to, go back one. You only have to get to 34%. You only have to get to 34% to get the same revenue. And then if so you would easily break even. Now, I haven't done $3 modelling because we didn't have it last week, but the optimum model I see of the council, I believe if we work with the council, we could get the 30 minutes, which is your option 2A, down to 15 minutes, and we could go to $1.50. The reverse is true. Everyone's trying to put the price up to get more money, but what it's meant is people go somewhere else. At $1.50 in 15 minutes, which you'd go to the year after the next financial year, and we work to get 80% utilisation, we believe council revenue would grow to over $1 million. So at 80% revenue utilisation, that's about the vibrancy we used to have. The shops would be full, the businesses would be working, the jobs would be back, the landlords would have money to retain the buildings, and the council would more than double their revenue. We believe that's an option we'd like to work with council on for the following year. We know you can't vote on it today, but we would love to work for the next stage.
Thank you, John. Tom Hudig.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. I'm of Dutch descent and I'll be very direct. My revenue cost in the last year has been $317,000 because I'm using that money is a gift from me to my tenants who are struggling to keep up and who cannot pay for their full rent. We chose Jackson Street because it was a great area to start a new business. And in 1994, we started at 89 Jackson Street. We started the Dutch shop, still going today. And since Jackson Street was booming at the time, we decided to invest in 4 more buildings. So we have 5 buildings on Jackson Street, and the tenants are really great people, and they are not unfortunately able to pay their most of their rents. I remind you, $317,000 per year. No tenant is in arrears, a gift keeping businesses and jobs going. Other landlords are in the same situation as I am. Please, the photo's not there, unfortunately, but there is a photo here. Please have a look at that photo. 1994, half the street was for sale, and if nothing is done by council, we will have the same situation. Were it not for landlords' generosity, we would have 5 empty buildings. 3 business owners, and 30 staff looking for employment. These 33 people pay your rates, and they live in your city. I would like to remind to you that councillors, landlords, business owners and employees have mortgages and loans. Stress and mental health are at high levels in the street. It is getting harder to find, the clock is ticking. 17 months of parking meters were installed, $16 million, 16 million financial damage. If you add up the losses over a few years in the Jackson Street Heritage Precinct, you're looking at tens of millions of dollars in revenue lost. I'd like to ask you 2 questions. How many jobs has council created in Jackson Street? And how many of you councillors have been in Jackson Street in the last month? Can I have a show of hands, please? Excellent. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Andrew Laurentos.
Good morning. Today I'm here to talk to you about Jackson Street, the destination street, the heritage street of Petone. Jackson Street is central to Petone's identity. It is more than the retail strip. It is more of a collection of buildings. Its character and historical architecture define this area, and preserving the heritage is essential to maintaining the spirit of our community. They tell us of a story of the past. Many of the buildings along Jackson Street were originally designed by notable architects. They tell us of a story of our past and reflect the craftsmanship, the ambition, the vision, and what shaped Petone into what it is today. The history is not accidental, and it is not easily preserved. When earthquake strengthening became mandatory, building owners along Jackson Street stepped up, working closely with the Lower Hutt City Council and the Heritage Authority to ensure that every upgrade respected that historical significance. This was not just structural engineering. It involved careful design and decisions around the doors, the windows, and reflected the original architectural eras, materials, and honoured the past, and even the final paint colours chosen to remain true to the heritage character of the street. These projects were complex. They were expensive and were undertaken because we believe in Jackson Street's future. My brother and I invested $3 million to earthquake strengthen between 125 and 133 Jackson Street. Our neighbour, 135 to 139 Jackson Street, invested $5 million. These were borrowed funds. $8 million that we invested in preserving heritage and protecting tenants, supporting local jobs, and ensuring Jackson Street remains a destination, not just today, but for generations to come. We believe we were building a partnership with the Lower Hutt City Council and a shared commitment to Jackson Street's success as Petone's heritage and specialised shopping precinct. However, the introduction of parking meters has worked against this initiative. The data shows it, the impact on business reflects it, reduced accessibility, discouraged visitors, and undermines the very investment made to strengthen and revitalise the street. Jackson Street is no ordinary strip. It's Petone's heritage street. It's a destination. It deserves policies that support its vitality, not measures that unintentionally weaken it. We have invested heavily in preserving its past. Now we must ensure the future is protected as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Sherry?
Point of order, Mayor. We allocated initially minutes for public comment, which we might have gone past. We're able to extend it. I just feel like we need a motion to extend public comment if it's going to run on much longer. I don't know how many people are listed. Do we need a motion
to extend?
Yeah.
No. permission of council, Karen, it's only 2 left. Will. Sherry?
He's already spoken.
Oh, you're done? Yeah. Joseph Saul.
Morning. I'm Joseph. I'm a pharmacist and I'm the owner of Unicam Tony Pharmacy on Jackson Street. So I'm just here to talk about pay parking. I suppose I'm here just probably speaking more of on our business level. You know, what are we feeling? You know, obviously a lot of people already pointed out. I can see from their faces here. You know, a lot of our customers. I suppose, you know, we all know that reduced foot traffic to Jackson Street is already a fact. You guys been there? You know, I walk down the street every day just to see what's going on. Hospitality has definitely been hit. Lots of people were not wanted to come to Jackson Street because they want to grab a coffee. And I mean, you know, behavior is the thing, right? We saw that behavior chart that if people think that's the case, and that's how we're gonna feel, okay? I mean, you know, I just paid my parking there and I thought I was gonna be here for like half an hour at least, but I think I'm probably gonna get a fine for $70, I don't know. That stressed me out. So that'll stress my customer out. I suppose for farmers' perspective is that we do need a time frame to work safely. But if our customers or patients have been forced to hurry themselves up because they didn't pay parking, or they get worried that they couldn't find parking, etc., that just means that we will have to, you know, we have to reduce in some way, and we don't want to do that. So, you know, if there's a reduced foot traffic to the streets, to us, and if the hospitality decided to close early, which we're seeing, from our perspectives as a business owner, we are the same. We are a small business owner with families, young children, who are the futures of the country. You know, I think it's kind of heartbreaking to know that, you know, can we afford to pay the staff? Can we sustain the business as per usual? We have reduced our staffing from 20 to 9. Okay, obviously, you know, we had COVID, and now we have pay parking. We don't want to increase prices because we don't want to, inflate the prices. But what do? You know, we customer have to walk, but we don't want that. So at the end of the day, I think we urge the council to review this seriously. 30 minutes free parking could be ideal. You know, that just gives people more peace of mind. And obviously you want to do it now because, you know, the December was great. We definitely see that uplift. The morale for the staff, for the customers, everybody. And now we're going to this downhill again, that if we don't resolve this quickly, then I think a lot of business will be closed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joseph, and everybody who's contributed this morning. Protest, demonstration, and freedom of speech allow us to live in a civil society and engage. We're not always going to agree, but to see the numbers that have turned up, many of you have stood by wonderful causes over the years. Thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your views with us. Moving now to item 4. Conflict of interest declarations. Are there any? Councillor Stellinger.
Councillors will be aware I'm a trustee of Youth Inspire, and from time to time that organisation has received funding from council to support the driving school there. And so I believe one of the items up for discussion later on concerns that pool of funding, so I'll step aside from that debate.
Thank you, Councillor Stellinger. Councillor Edwards.
Same, Mr Mayor. I'm a driving tutor at Youth Inspire, so I'll step aside on the question of road safety spending.
Thank you. Item 5, recommendations to Ko ni hira o Te Awa Kairangi Council. Precedence of business in accordance with Standing Order 10.4. I call precedence to item 5B, Draft Annual Plan 2026-27 Final Decisions on page 85 of the agenda. Good morning, everyone. Before we move into the detail of the annual plan and long-term plan, I just want to take a moment to set the scenes for decisions we're about to make. People in our city are under real pressure. Cost of living is high. Families are making hard choices every week about what they can afford. Over the past 12 months, more than 40% of those who have newly registered for a benefit in the hut are people who have lost their jobs. These are households who never expected to be in that position. They are doing it tough. We can see on the streets that there are people with extreme unmet needs, be it mental health, homelessness, etc. Our community is looking to us. They expect us to manage their money carefully, focus on what matters most, and to show that we understand the reality that we are living with. At the same time, the scale of the challenges facing this city are significant. We are dealing with decades of underinvestment in the core infrastructure that people rely on every day, the water they drink, the wastewater and stormwater systems that protect healthy environment, and the essential services that allow the city to function from morning to night. With our partners, we are undertaking one of the largest infrastructure renewals programs the city has ever seen, Te Wai Takamori. The transfer to the new water entity, Te Aki Wai, must be done as smoothly as possible, and we need to take our community with us so they understand the changes and why they are necessary. But infrastructure pressures do not stop there. Many of our buildings, community facilities and sporting assets are reaching the end of their life. The cost of patching and maintaining ageing assets is rising rapidly, and in many cases renewal or difficult decisions about future service levels will be required. At the same time, our external environment is becoming more challenging. The government is proposing rates capping and potential council amalgamation. These reforms could significantly limit the tools available to councils to respond to local needs at the very time when the demands on us are increasing. And there is the growing impact of extreme weather. Across Aotearoa, there have already been 9 extreme weather events in early 2026. January and February alone have surpassed the total number of severe weather-related states of emergency declared in all of 2025. Warmer oceans and more moisture-laden atmosphere are driving more intense storms, heavier rainfall, and more frequent flooding. These events aren't abstract risks for us. Our most recent events has already cost us $1.5 million in cleanup costs and rising. There will be more events like this, we're told, in 2026, and extreme weather planning and investing is not a nice to have, it's a must to both externally and internally to make our city more resilient and our residents safe. So we are facing a very difficult reality. We have increasing costs, we have ageing infrastructure and assets, we have growing extreme weather events and climate risks, we have potential limits on our ability to raise revenue, and we know that our community is already struggling. This means we must become more efficient internally, must focus relentlessly on the essentials, and we must be honest with our community that difficult choices lie ahead. The reality is this: we will be asking our community to pay more for rates, and in some areas they may see less. This will be hard, and we need to be clear about why these decisions are necessary and how they protect the long-term future of our city. This is a moment of significant change. The decisions we make through this annual plan and long-term plan will shape the resilience, affordability, and livability of our city for years to come. I want to acknowledge the work you have all put in to reach this point. The conversations have not been easy, and the decisions ahead will not be easy either. Thank you for your dedicated work to date and for the careful, thoughtful approach you continue to bring as we work through this together. Thank you. Now, Tipu Nunana, Manager of Financial Planning and Performance. Thank you, Tipu.
Thank you, Kia ora koutou. We've got several papers on the agenda today related to the draft annual plan. I'm going to be talking to the final budget decisions paper where you'll be confirming the draft annual plan for consultation as well as the proposed 9.5% rates increase. The presentation slide pack is available for you in diligent. So just a quick reminder about our high-level approach for this draft annual plan. Our current long-term plan sets out the strategic priorities and has a focus on infrastructure investment, renewing aging assets, and growth-related investment to enable improved housing outcomes. The 26-27 annual plan represents year 3 of the current LTP and is based on delivering what was agreed through that process, with some updates for unavoidable or legislative changes. In the next few months, we will be kicking off the process to prepare the next long-term plan, and that will be an opportunity to review and reset priorities. So some of the key changes in this annual plan: the impact of the new water services legislation. So Te Aki Wai is on track to take over water services delivery from 1 July 2026. Through your decisions in December, an LTP amendment process is underway to reflect all the transfers of the budgets, the assets and the liabilities to Te Aki Wai. The Te Aki Wai board will be holding responsibility for setting the water services strategy, the investment program and the water charges pricing strategy. On the 4th of March, there will be a briefing with the Te Aki Wai board where you'll receive an update on the water services strategy. Rates affordability, I think there's been lots of conversations about rates affordability and how many in our community are struggling to pay their rates, and that the current trajectory of rates increases are not sustainable. In addition, you'll be aware the government's introduction of rates capping expectations also requires you to consider how you want to respond. The next long-term plan is going to be challenging with some tough decisions. You have, as elected members, already given us some early direction on the path to reducing the future rates increases to make it more affordable. So some of the decisions that we are bringing to you today are in support of that direction. So quick recap of our high-level timeline. Since the first conversations at the Hui in November, there have been a couple of briefings and a meeting in December to progress decisions on the draft annual plan. The briefing sessions included you working through the service catalogue and the capital projects to start navigating your priorities and understanding the direction of future decisions you may want to progress. Today, you need to confirm the final decisions for the draft annual plan ahead of the public consultation process, including the rates increase. Officers will then be preparing the annual plan documents for consultation and presenting these back for Council to adopt on the 24th of March. Month of April will be a period of community engagement. In May, there will be an opportunity to understand the feedback from the community on the draft plan. 3rd of June, there will be final decisions on the plan, and then on 30th of June, we'll be bringing back the final annual plan alongside the LTP amendment document for you to adopt, and the rates will be struck. Briefings will be scheduled throughout this process as required to help support you in your decision making. So I'm not going to go on too much about the slide. I think it's just highlighting that from 1 July, Te Aki Wai will be billing customers directly for water services rather than through rates per the current process. So all the rates references in our report and this presentation refers to Hutt City Council rates only. So where we landed for the draft annual plan at the moment, we're looking at a 9.5% rates increase in 26-27. This is down from the initial 16.2 based on all the decisions you've made to date. For an average household, this equates to about $4.31 per week or $224 per annum. The red bars on the slide represent the cost pressures that have come through this draft annual plan around aquatics and landfill, mostly as a result of economic conditions impacting our revenue. And then the green bars represent the savings and the budget reductions. The largest decrease of this is through the water services budget that has been stripped out. This 9.5% also assumes none of the saving decisions in front of you or any paid parking decisions for Petone. Looking at the longer term rates projections, we're looking at a rates increase of 7% in 2028 and 5.5% from 2029 onwards. The actual rate increases from this point are dependent on the future decisions you make around savings and priorities as outlined in the target operating model report included in the agenda. A small part of this rates reduction can be achieved through the decisions in front of you today. Assuming all the savings options are taken up from today and there are no changes to Petone projects or Petone parking, that could reduce it down to 5% from 2029. So just given these projections at the 5.5%, with all else being equal, Hutt City Council rates would reach about $3,700 in 2034 for an average residential property. The estimated TRQY charges per the Water Services Delivery Plan is projected to be $5,700 in 2034. So a household in Lower Hutt would be looking at a bill of about $9,400 in 2034. To reduce these rates increases, there will be some difficult choices to be worked through in the upcoming LTP process. So under the current modelling and the rates increases, our financial strategy metrics are all in green and meet the limits that we've set in our financial strategy. In the next few slides, there's an overview of the capital spend projections. So the capital spend for 2027 is $89 million, of which $60 million is on level of service improvement projects. The key projects in this category include the landfill, the Eastern Hutt Road resilience work, as well as Riverlink. We're entering this draft annual plan with a projected operating deficit of $64 million in the current year, then just over $8 million in 2027, and then we're projecting to balance from 2029 onwards. Net debt, we're projecting to reach about $444 million of net debt in 2032, and then it starts dropping down after that. This is the key assumption in this projection is the repayment of the TRQY water debt of $295 million on 1 July 2026. The rephasing of the Cross Valley Connections program to beyond 2034 has also had a favourable impact on dropping the debt level down. And then this just shows the indicative impact on rates by property category. And included in your pack, I'm not really going to go through it, but there's a couple more slides on the impact by suburb in the Hutt, as well as some appendices that include the summary of financial decisions included in the report today. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Deputy? No questions. Thank you. Oh.
Sorry, Chair, just sense of timing. Some of the modelling that was brought from the Jackson Street project and Petone paid parking, some of that modelling differs from the proposals that we've got in. At what point are we going to address those questions? Are you asking for questions in that side of things now?
Should we do it later when we get to the item? Chris, is that okay? Thank you, Deb. Precedence of business, we now consider item 5A, target operating model, including the annual plan and long-term plan 5C, development contributions policy update 5D, revenue and financing policy update, and 5E, proposed fees for commercial dog walkers. Joe, Miller, Duncan and Jared coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll open up and then Jared Griffiths will speak and Duncan is here from PwC.
Page 7.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's no accident that the report in front of you is called Heading Imiti Taiheke, Adjusting the Sales. Hutt City Council, like local government, is operating in an uncertain environment, entering choppy waters, if you like. And a pessimist can just, an optimist, we can either hope things change, we can say it's all too hard, or we can adjust the sails. And that's what this is about. We're operating in a very uncertain environment, rates capping, simplifying local government, which will require us to look at the way we're organised, RMA reform, meaning a new regional planning system, changes for development levies, and a myriad of changes that will change the way we work and the resources that are needed. And as you've indicated, rising costs are a reality for every part of our business and for everybody who lives, works and runs a business in our city. We've run budget deficits over a number of years, and we've heavily increased investment in water infrastructure. We've brought technology up to date, and we have the opportunity to make the most of gains from artificial intelligence, which we've been equipping our staff well with in terms of their skills. Extreme weather events, as you identified, are happening more often and their impact is greater. We are situated in New Zealand's most densely populated, that's really hard to say, densely populated floodplain, and therefore and vulnerable to coastal inundation. I'd suggest that resilience needs to be much further up in investment prioritisation than perhaps it has been previously. Clean-up costs from last week's storm alone, we estimate conservatively at 1.5 million, 1.2 to 1.5 million. That's comparable to about 1% on the rates. And that's just one single event. That's the impact it can have on our finances. And we don't have a rainy day fund. We've consistently made year-on-year savings, including for the year ahead. But adjusting the sales suggests that a more strategic approach is necessary to guide investments and prioritisation over this term, given that the short-term savings options are largely exhausted. And that's why the previous council asked us to prepare budget review options for this council to consider, including a focus on service prioritisation, affordability and value for money as part of setting the annual plan. The delivery of a target operating report was a key requirement in the personal performance indicators that the previous council set me to achieve this year. Target operating model was initiated with the support of PwC as one of the big four consultancy firms. Why? To give it objectivity, independence, robustness, and a tried and tested methodology. Adjusting our sales shows our commitment to financial scrutiny by examining not just what we spend, but how and why we spend it. We've reviewed budgets, service costs, and take a disciplined look at where money is spent and where savings can be made, supported by independent analysis, benchmarking where available, and expertise. But even with good financial discipline and substantial savings delivered so far, the target operating model shows that tough challenges lie ahead. To do more of what our community expects and to keep services affordable, we're inviting council to consider, I've definitely not put my teeth in this morning, one fell out yesterday, to consider the options and provide guidance and direction to us as officers so that we can set that strategic framework for decision making to guide us. I know some of the options are confronting and decisions in the long run won't be easy, but it's important that we're upfront about the choices and the trade-offs that can be made. Just to confirm to you today, the target operating model doesn't lock in or confirm any decisions. What I hope it does is provide you with an evidence base as elected members to begin to shape decisions and have conversations with our community and bust the dual myths of the magic money tree and we simply employ too many staff. I want to acknowledge Jared, who's led this work on my behalf and on behalf of all corporate leadership team and all the senior staff who've worked hard to produce what we believe is a quality piece of work, which the corporate leadership team and I present to you for your consideration. So with that, those introductory remarks in mind, I'll hand over to Jared Griffiths, please, Mr. Mayor.
Kia ora, thanks, Joe. Kia ora, Mayor and Councillors. I'll take the paper as read and just will make a few brief comments. The target operating model, as you know, was developed between September last year through until January this year. We selected PwC as a partner with us on this project after a competitive procurement process Duncan Scott, who's here with me, will give an external view shortly, but they were selected based on their expertise and ability to deliver this sort of work across private and public sector organisations, and it's well within their expert skill set. As Joe mentioned, the genesis of this work very much was from Council's June meeting last year, where you adopted the annual plan and asked for advice in terms of budget options for future rates affordability. Was subsequently signalled in the Chief Executive's pre-election report, briefing incoming Council, and as a conversation we've had in recent months. We delivered this work at pace to ensure that we could provide you with information at the outset of this triennium. It supports you to make informed decisions immediately as part of this budget process, but more importantly as part of your upcoming long-term plan process, which will kick off shortly. A target operating model is a highly useful strategy tool for you as elected members. In this context, it's a review of how we operate and not just what we spend each year. It asks what services we deliver, what assets we hold, how we organise ourselves, and where are the structural drivers of our expenditure going forward. As you've heard from Joe, there's a clear message in the report, and that is, as a council, we've exhausted incremental savings. If council wishes to continue to reduce rates over time, structural drivers must be addressed, and those drivers include our assets, our third-party spending, and our discretionary services. You'll see the adjusting sales report contained 3 options and highlights option 2 as a preferred one. Option 2, described as a balance option, identifies potential operating savings in the range of $14 to $22 million. It strikes a balance between financial impact and feasibility, but there is no doubt there are difficult choices within an option, and council will need to consider in the future in pursuit of lower rates increases. Given the contents of the report, it's really important to be clear on what the report is and what it isn't. This paper does not commit council to asset divestment, service reductions, or fee increases. Those decisions are ones for you to take as part of your long-term plan process and consider in the future. What the paper seeks is agreement to a strategic direction, authorisation to undertake more detailed work, and a structured framework for future decision-making. Without a framework like this, savings risk becoming reactive and ad hoc, but with it, decisions can be evidence-based and sequenced responsibly. Finally, our officers will advise that we're going to make some minor editorial adjustments to the report following this meeting to improve the clarity of some of the insights contained within the report, and I'll just run those through now. On page 23 of the Adjusting Our Sales report, we've replaced the first line, which reads, "We employ fewer people than other Wellington councils," with "We spend less per resident than the average for Wellington councils and large metropolitan councils." On page 24, we have replaced the title, "We provide more pool capacity than the national average over summer months," with "We provide more swimming pool capacity than the Sport New Zealand benchmark over summer months." Finally, on page 24, where a reference is made to the appearance of over-provision of hubs and libraries, we'll add a reference to the report to identify what councils we've compared to make this comparison, and it will read, "This is based on a comparison of library hubs per head of population with the following councils: New Plymouth, Palmerston North, Wellington, Christchurch, Dunedin, Hamilton, Hastings, and Rotorua." With that, I'll hand over to Duncan to make some external comments.
Thanks, Jared. Kia ora, Council. I just want to make a few short comments. So I want to talk about process. We went through a couple of observations from a PwC perspective as we went through that process, and then just a couple of personal conclusions from going through the work. So to briefly introduce myself, I'm a Managing Director at PwC, and I lead our Finance, Economics and Analytics consulting practice. And I spent the last 4 or 5 years working on these kind of projects, operating model, sustainable cost takeout work. So I was asked to be part of this team because I've got that experience and I've done this work over a range of organisations. Comments I'd like to make on process. I think really, really importantly, we were asked to drive the process. So we worked really closely with Jared, with the senior leadership team and managers right across the organisation. But it was very clear that they wanted our methodology, our approach to bring that consistency of approach and that robustness of approach. The second thing I'd like to say on process is we were encouraged right from day one to bring a really challenging approach to the work. We had a mandate to look at everything that council was doing, and we were expected to challenge current thinking, past thinking, bring new insights. And as part of that, we brought in a whole range of sort of specialists across the time of the work, which included specialists in workforce, digital procurement, property management, to ensure that we were getting the latest thinking and where some of the opportunities would be for council. So I think that was really, really positive from our point of view, and I felt really encouraged by that. In terms of observations, I think perhaps covered already, but I do think it is worth reiterating the point that the council's already done a lot of work around tackling some of the more obvious opportunities for cost savings or cost trimming, as we tend to call it. Of course, there's still opportunities to continue down that line, and you should continue to be, pushing council to continuously be improving on process improvement and all those kind of things. But I think your runway for that is quickly coming to a close, and actually it requires a much more fundamental look at the services that you deliver, the property and infrastructure that you own, and how you use that in the future, the way that you ensure you're getting value for money from your third-party spending and the work that you do with your strategic partners, process efficiency, and the way that you work with your customers in a way that looks to the future rather than to the past. And again, really encouraged that the work that we've done has looked at all of those areas pretty, thoroughly and are included in the report. I think the second observation, and again, it comes back to what Joe and Jared have said, is implementation is going to be really key. This is, I think, a really strong roadmap for the future. I think it gives you really clear direction and options about how you can get to where you want to get to. The tough part now is ensuring that you invest the resources, the capability, and the time to ensure that that change process is managed well, because inevitably some of those changes are going to impact people in council, but more importantly, your ratepayers and the people who use your services. So ensuring you do that thoughtfully, carefully, is going to be really, really critical. And the second part of that, and I think even more important, is that really strong focus on benefits. That you've got to be relentless on driving those benefits as you go forward, and I think council have got a key part to play in that. So sort of final conclusions, and then happy to take any questions. The first one is, I think it was a really good, robust process, and I think you should take a lot of confidence in the process that you went through. And the second conclusion I would make is I think you've got a good combination here of continuing that continuous improvement pathway that you've been on, some really good sort of internal process improvement opportunities, but you're not shying away from those tougher conversations around actually what services council should be delivering in the future, how it goes about delivering those, and therefore assets and what technology it needs to deliver those most effectively. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, I did send through an email requesting some of those changes to the text, so thank you for acknowledging that. I don't know that all councillors saw the response to that. However, I was just wondering if you could repeat what you said about the changes that would be made on page 23.
Certainly. So on page 23, there's a title there that says, we employ fewer people than other Wellington councils. For clarity, we have updated that to we spend less per resident than the average for Wellington councils and large metropolitan councils. That makes it much more clear in terms of the benchmark that was used and is presented on that page. On page 24, which has...
Sorry, I heard you on page 24, thank you. Just in regards to page 23 though, the email I sent referred to a few statements made in there, because there are a couple of others. Other Wellington councils pay their staff more than we do. We spend less per resident than other Wellington councils that are also comparing to averages. So I just wondered if, for sake of clarity, those statements could also refer to that they are being compared to averages. Yeah,
so,
thank you. Just so it's clear, thank you.
Yes, so those will be updated to reflect very clearly the benchmarks and the comparisons that we used.
Councillor Stellinger.
Yes, thank you for those adjustments. And first up, speaking about it, congratulations on the very comprehensive report. I think it's a great basis for which we can start considering our way forward. So thanks for that. On that same page 23, I just had a further question. And to me, as a decision-making look at this information, I'm conscious that the data being used has been superseded by 2025 audited and published results for the councils we're comparing to. And for many councils, including ourselves, there's been some significant changes between 2024 and 25. I imagine it will only take a couple of hours to download the annual reports and tweak the figures. It may give the same answers. I don't know that. But I think that would give me a lot more comfort if that was done. So I'm wondering if that's possible.
Through you, Mr. Chair, ultimately what we'd advise is that the target operating model project is conducted at a point of time with a set of assumptions and the data available as the project was conducted. Uses the evidence and the benchmarks to make those comparisons, and we've been really clear in terms of the references that we used. What we would also advise is that these documents are never designed to be static in their use. So they're effectively a living document in many respects, and through the detailed work that would happen in the lead up to the long-term plan and to support your decision making, if we're relying on any of those benchmarks or that data, we would seek to update that with more recent figures where they're available. But for the purposes of this report, the references used and avoiding further work undertaken, we would advise that it's appropriate to get those as they are.
I still don't understand why, given it should only be a couple of hours work, why we cannot just update it now so we have that information before us. Given the scale of the project, it seems like a very, very minor addition.
That's something that we're happy to have a look at, though ultimately through the work that was done on the project, the references that we used, and while it may seem in terms of a minor commitment of work, the benchmarking and the work to validate and use published information, particularly DIA information that's available online has been produced to the sector, is still our advice not to necessarily open that up to rely on the references used. But if the work is relied upon in the future, we'll update that with more recent information.
If I may say so, I don't think it materially affects your consideration today. On the 1st of July, DIA will update all their benchmarks. You will want to know what all of that says. So will we. But this is where it is right now.
Councillor Ravi.
Just a question about the investment. You've already mentioned that we need to make the investment to develop this model further. I just wonder, because we've done work already for the last 4 or 5 months, we must have made some investment in that space by appointing PwC. Do we know how much we've spent, and will that be part of the total amount that we will be committing to for the year?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the work to date in terms of with PwC to develop the target operating model and the supporting evidence behind it, I can advise that cost $339,000. That will not form part of the investment that's sought as part of the program. So it is investment in the underpinning advice and the framework that you're receiving today. Can also advise that those costs are offset through internal operational savings within the strategy and engagement budget, so come at no additional cost to council or ratepayers.
Councillor Dyer.
Just a quick question. You mentioned you've done a few of these TOMs before. Just keen to kind of hear your take on where we are as an organisation compared to some of these other organisations you've worked with. You know, councils, are the challenges we're facing unique to Hutt City, or are these bigger than that?
Yeah, thanks, through Chair. A lot of the challenges, as you would expect, are common across local authorities right across the country, and as the point that Jo set out in her introduction, a lot of these are externally driven issues or sort of structural issues that are affecting councils right across the piece. I think where you're ahead of the game is the the positive approach that certainly from the leadership team that we've spoken to, of actually leaning into those challenges and not waiting for events to overtake them, but actually let's have a look forward around what we think those events are going to transpire, and let's ensure that we've got a really robust way of responding to those as quickly as possible. So I think, you should be congratulated on that in terms of that proactivity, because I'm starting to have conversations with other councils, and in fact I had a conversation yesterday with the regional council on exactly these issues, because they're picking up on the fact that Hook Council and one or two others have started looking at this, and they need to do that as well, because of structural change and a whole range of things that's happening through central government.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, you referenced, Jared, that the report itself presents a few options for moving forward, targeted, balanced and ambitious options. And there is, I think, reference to what might be a preferred one. Just in terms of today's meeting, we're asked to approve this report. Are we implicitly also approving option 2, or is that a decision for some time in future?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So through the adoption of the report, you'd also be accepting the recommended option of option 2 within it.
Thank you. Councillor Stillinger.
I'm just referring to page 65 of our agenda, which is 55 of the report. I just don't have a clear picture in my mind as to how the work will proceed in the new year if we approve heading down this approach. And really what I'm referring to is the extent of involvement of elected members during the year outside of decision-making points in time for the LTP. I just can't really get a picture of how such a wide range of initiatives, which vary from IT projects to rationalisation and so on. It's probably the asset rationalisation, I imagine, will just come back to us for a decision at some point in time. But some of the projects included in the program, which are enhancing our services, may produce some efficiencies, or they may be purely for customer service benefits. If we approve the report now, does that mean those projects commence and we don't have a further decision point in relation to them? If that's the case, I feel a little bit if it's not, I'm really fine. But if it is the case, I just have a little bit of unease, and it's really connected with the costs of individual elements versus payback periods. In consideration, we may be amalgamated before we get a payback and those kind of things. So could we just get a bit more clarity about how that might work?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we would advise two things. So there'll be a period of further work and more detailed design that would occur as part of many of the projects on the target operating model that would need to come back to elected members as part of your long-term plan process. So any decision, for example, that relates to service reduction, asset divestment, fee changes, changes to the capital program, are ones only elected members can make. It's not something that can be decided upon today through acceptance of the report and be operationalised without coming back to you further as part of the long-term plan process. That should give you confidence that there'll be ongoing elected member oversight and engagement as part of the target operating model implementation. In terms of the program itself, if approved today, officers would begin to establish program resourcing internally, and what that would look like would setting up the structures and the engagement, particularly the linkage to the long-term plan, to make sure you're briefed and effectively those detailed business cases and options are coming back to you, where you'd expect to see more information on investment and benefits and payback periods, so as part of those projects. So that would very much happen as part of the implementation. What we would also say is that officers will commence work internally on management practice improvements, as you'd expect that come through the target operating model. So for example, there are a number of insights around improvements we can make to procurement. Those matters are not necessarily something that needs to come back to elected members. Of course, we'll keep you informed. Those are things that we can do internally to improve practices consistent with the TOM findings.
It's an enormous undertaking. Okay, there are no more questions before we get to the recommendations, adjusting our sales, our opportunity to begin to address increasing financial challenges in the year ahead. Not just our council's challenges, but the pressure faced by our community and residents. Report provides the foundation for honest conversations about trade-offs, choices, what we can realistically afford to keep doing into the future. Finding saving means making difficult choices about our assets and services. It's not the decision before us today that will come as part of the long-term plan, but this provides a basis for that conversation. This is the opportunity to come together to create meaningful change for our city. Our decisions about how to proceed will shape the future of Lower Hutt for many years to come. Following good engagement with most of you this week and listening to what's been said, I'm going to suggest some additional recommendations, which I'll ask Kate, please, to be shown on screen. Councillor Lewis, then Councillor Stallinger.
Thank you. Just a clarity question, and it's going on from one of the other councillors said, the formal program structure for implementing it. My concern is that part of a program will start and then we're going to need more money. That's not going to happen. That's the clarity I want. It's going to be clean cut before any next step.
Through you, Chair, one thing, your annual plan papers include the program funding request for the Target Operating Model program. We're proposing that's done in a stage-gated way where we're asking for approval to release initial investment as part of this annual plan. And then any further funding within that $6 million envelope comes back as part of the long-term plan and the subsequent annual plan to ensure that you continue to have oversight in terms of that funding and further decision. So there shouldn't be a sense that you're approving investment today and the work doesn't come back without further controls and oversight going forward.
Should I move the motion, then second, then have the debate? Do that. Yep.
Thank you, first of all these additional motions. I think that adds a lot to our decision. Just the question I have is, when we get to the following paper about the budget numbers and make the decisions through, does this lock in a decision to put 3 years worth of funding, the full $6 million in, or will we address that subsequent?
Yeah, we address it in the next paper, but it would be wrong of us, wouldn't it, just to say there's 1 year's and not tell you in a ballpark what we think it's likely to cost over 3 years. So you would be locking in effect, an annual plan decision for next year. As to the rest of it, that's a wider decision for another date. Jenny?
Correct, and there'll be an opportunity through the long-term plan process to review the second and third year investment programs, and there'll be a lot more information, as Jared's mentioned, around the detailed program coming through to council, which will inform those longer-term decisions.
What I will say, if I may, Mr. Chair, is this: I had to take 114 million out in my last local authority, 50% of the operating budget over 5 years. You cannot do change of that level or this level without putting money in. So, for example, some of the things that we think we can get out with procurement over suppliers is going to require an investment in staff. Do I have a detailed breakdown of exactly how all that money would be spent? No. We have a ballpark figure. In fact, PwC suggested it should be more, and we took a Hutt City Council pragmatic view of what it should be, but as and when work comes forward, that work will get more detailed.
So I take it then, if these motions are passed, we will have put in the 6 million each of the 3 years into the budget, or just the first year? Okay, yeah, I'm happy then. I'm happy to second it if you like, Mr. Mayor.
That's your accountancy hat on there, Councillor Salinger. I move the motion noting my additional chair's recommendations 1 to 5, page 7 of the agenda. Recommendations 1 to 5. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Salinger, thank you. Is there any debate? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate, and it's been said already, to thank the officers for this very thorough piece of work, and PwC for their support as well. I think certainly, we've found things to discuss about this report already, but I don't think anyone's in disagreement with the intent of the report. And one thing I really like about it is taking a very holistic and strategic look at the decisions we have to make over the next few years. We often make decisions in isolation around this table, and I sometimes feel like there's a bigger picture we're not quite cognizant of all the time. Thank you for the attention that has been paid to my fairly pedantic comments around clarity of statements in there. I think it is really important that those statements need to be clear and accurate to our ratepayers in terms of our performance and service provision. Mostly because I don't want those things to become a distraction. That is not the bulk of this report. This report is about these difficult decisions that are ahead of us, not arguing about whether those statements are correct or not. I'm just acknowledging a point Councillor Salinger made. I also kind of have to accept that this report was created in a moment in time. It was made with some assumptions even about what's going to happen in the future. And there are some things in there that we know are going to change and quite significantly, including in our budget. It currently includes water services, and once those are off our books, some of the figures in that report are going to change very significantly. It was made with rates capping in mind. We don't yet know the final outcome of the government's rates capping decision making. However, it does capture this very basic commitment we have made to look to ways to reduce our rates over the coming years, regardless of whether rates capping comes in or what its parameters might be. So I'd just like to acknowledge the very thorough report here. It's a good basis for us to move forward over these next few years. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brown.
Kia ora, thank you as well. I'd like to add to the officers for all the work that's been done on this report, and I support that. It's really important that we do the strategic work in these very choppy waters that we have ahead. There's a lot of change that is not exactly quantified, but we know it's coming one way or another. And doing nothing's not an option at the moment. But as we know, in these ever more complicated times, in the latest weather event, we had people calling council and were waiting for a long time. We need other tools. Those sort of things need investment. We know that, and we've talked about it a lot around contracting, and are we doing the very best we can do? That takes an intentional investment to get that right, and the digitalisation that we are leading the way on. But also reassured that at any time along this process we can align to those changes if and when they do come, and adapt. And as was said, it's a live report, it's a live document. So thank you for the work.
Councillor Dyer.
Kia ora, thank you. I think the thing that puts us in an interesting position here is that we're one of the few councils, particularly in the Wellington region, that's already exhausted all the easy wins. We've already trimmed off the more obvious low-hanging fruit. And that means that this next stage, which is where some councils are probably a few years away from being, does seem like some pretty gnarly issues in there that we need to navigate over the next few years. Obviously, there was foresight on the previous council to look ahead to these cost pressures that were coming and the ongoing deficit that's been projected, that simply was just not sustainable. I'm really proud that we've taken this step prior to the talk of rates capping and amalgamation from the government. But I do worry a little bit about the payback periods of some of these initiatives, but I'm slightly reassured by the new recommendation that any changes to services or facilities will include elect member decision-making processes and consultation, because I think it's a really important part, because this is a big moving beast, as we know. The TOM today gives us a really strategic direction to work more efficiently and effectively using evidence-based decision-making, which nobody can complain about.
Okay, if there's no one else, I'll now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against say no. Declare the motion carried. Development Contributions Policy Update on page 253 of the agenda. Dwayne Fletcher from Vale Consulting and Deepu. Dwayne's online. 253.
Thank you. So there isn't a presentation for this. I'm just going to take the report as read and I'll do a few introductory comments. With the transition of water services to Te Aki Wai, we are required to make changes and update our development contributions policy. Dwayne is available to help answer any technical questions, and he's also been involved in the development of the Te Aki Wai policy. So from 1 July, Te Aki Wai will be responsible for all water-related development contributions and will be setting their own policy and charges. Council officers have recommended to the board that the Te Aki Wai policy should adopt year 2 of the charges in the current council policy, including the step up in the valley floor, with the full charge being applicable from 1 July 2027. So that's our expectation, but the decision-making process is still ongoing, so we'll provide an update on that once that becomes available. It is expected that there'll be a transitionary period of at least a year where the council will be administering the Te Aki Wai policy on their behalf, and we're still working through the process of how we would do that and the cost recovery mechanisms of doing that. So the changes in our policy are now quite simple. We've only got the transport activity left. All the water services charges and projects and references have been removed from our policy. Because the transport charge is a citywide charge, the policy now, all the catchment maps have been removed as well. We're not required to consult on this change because we've already consulted on the water services change last year. And transitionally, up until any consents, building or resource consents applications received before 1 July 2026 would still need to be considered under the current council policy. So what it means for our budgets is on the revenue side, our estimated DC was around 10 million on average over the next 8 years. It's now decreasing down to 1 million on average. Also, through the last long-term plan, we put in a policy for development contribution remissions for community housing providers with a budget of $500,000 a year, and that's going down to about just under 50,000 a year. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Dyer.
Thank you. You briefly mentioned the stepping up there. I couldn't see in the report, and I tried to find it in previous reports, but am I right that this is the next year is the last step up to where we were meant to be 3 years ago, or was there one more year after that?
There's one more year after that. So this is year 2.
Yeah.
So 1 July 2026 charge that they'll be adopting, and then year 3 is the last year where it's the full charge, 1 July 2027.
And is Te Aki Wai taking on that next step up, or are they keeping it the year 2 where we are now? We don't know.
They'll take, well, we're assuming they'll take year 2 where we are now. As for what happens the year after that, I think we don't really have.
And the stepping up was just for the water,
just for
in the
valley floor, yeah.
So it won't affect our DCs, but could potentially Te Aki Wai's.
Yes.
Well, we've obviously told them there's a desire to step up, but they can do their own thing now.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I just had one question, mainly for the benefit of new councillors in the room. I noticed that we're still collecting development contributions from each new development towards the cross-valley connections, and it's been signalled by the government that they will be paying for at least the road itself. So could you please just explain what happens with development contributions that are collected and maybe that purpose doesn't proceed?
I'll maybe start, and Dwayne, you may need to jump in and help here. Essentially, we're allowed to collect DCs for anything that's in our plan. So it's not that we've stopped the project at the moment. We've just transferred the budget out to beyond 2034. So there's still an intention from council to invest in parts of Cross Valley Connections, that would be our part of the project. And on that basis, we would still look to collect it in the meantime, and then through the next long-term plan, we'd need to revisit what we do with it and rephase it.
However, if that project doesn't proceed, any project doesn't proceed, that money is refunded, right?
That would need to be refunded.
Through the chair, and if you really did withdraw the entire project, you weren't funding any part of it. That would be correct. And if a substantial portion of it is withdrawn in terms of your long rising your LTP 27, if and to the extent it's funded from another party or withdrawn, yes, some kind of refund would be warranted to consider.
Thank you, Dwayne. If there's no more questions, I'll ask Kate to put the recommendations. Thank you, Deb. Good. Okay, I'll move the motion and recommendations 1 to 5 on page 253 of the agenda. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dyer. Is there any debate? I'll now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against say no. Declare the motion carried. Item D, Revenue and Financing Policy Update on page 294, the agenda.
Sorry, Chair, point of order. Are we able to take a 10-minute break? It's been 2 hours now, understanding order 4.2.
Do you want to do this or take the break now? Oh, yeah. We've got an external for this, Nick Davis. Why don't we just do this one and then take a... Oh, you got to go. I'll break. Well, you could have discreetly left. So he gets 2 breaks. Shall we move that he stays while we take a break? Nick Davis. Welcome, Nick, from Martin Jenkins. And also Alicia Andrews and Deepu. Thank you. In your hands.
Pardon me, kia ora koutou. Martin Jenkins was engaged to support the Council's review of its revenue and financing policy. And as you're aware, the need to review and amend the policy was triggered by the water services transition. There are clear steps in the legislation that Council is required to follow in determining its policy. The first step being determining the best way to pay for each activity through a funding needs analysis, and that step must consider the community outcomes that each activity supports, who benefits from the activity or causes the need for each activity, and assesses the most appropriate funding sources. And then the second step is where Council applies its judgment about the overall effect of how costs are shared on the community's wellbeing, including how rates affect affordability, business competitiveness, and the like. So as part of our review, we've considered previous analysis and work supporting the current funding arrangements, undertaken a first principles review of the current funding needs analysis. We've considered the implications of the removal of water services for the policy and considered the impacts of the 2025 general revaluation process. As part of this, we've also taken the opportunity to undertake a comparative analysis of Hutt City Council's revenue and financing approach when compared with other similar cities and districts, including your nearest neighbours in the Wellington region. And as you'll see in the Officer's report, we've suggested a number of practical changes to improve the clarity of the current policy, including areas where council needs to adjust the funding bands in the policy, and those recommendations have been reflected in the track changes version of the draft policy, which is in attachment 1 of the paper that you're considering. Our overall conclusion is that council's funding needs analysis is sound. The beneficiary analysis and the sources of funding used for each activity are consistent with public finance and user pays principles. While there are opportunities to introduce additional targeted rates for certain activities, our view is that the relatively small amounts of revenue that are collected from these activities would not warrant the introduction of greater complexity into the rating system, and that the transparency of your current policy can be increased through the drafting changes that we've recommended. We've considered the impacts of the removal of water services on the policy. Because you adopted targeted rates in 25-26 for drinking water supply and for wastewater, the impacts on the policy are primarily limited to the removal of stormwater, given that is partly funded by general rates. When we've looked at that in some detail, we've concluded that the removal of stormwater would have negligible impacts on the overall allocation of rates between the different property groups, and that's after taking into account the impervious land areas covered by commercial and residential property groups. In effect, if you were to make an adjustment to reflect the slight overweighting towards commercial properties associated with stormwater, then you'd be looking at a negligible adjustment to your current percentage allocations. I think it's a difference from about 60.3% from 60% for residential to 60.3%. So in light of the fact that there are still final decisions to be made around stormwater charging by Te Akiwai, we do not consider that there is a requirement to change your current approach to rates differentials at the moment, solely as a result of the removal of stormwater services. And in addition, we recommend not making further wholesale changes to rating approaches at this time because of government proposals to standardise activity reporting and introduce rates capping, which may merit a more fulsome review in due course. Overall, Hutt City's funding approach is similar to many other councils, and the council has applied user pays principles rigorously, and in fact collects a higher share of its funding through fees and charges than several other councils that we've looked at. And you'll see in the paper, in the formal recommendations, that no changes are proposed to the use of capital value as a rating base, use of UAGCs, or the current fixed percentage approach to allocating general rates. Now, there is one issue that is highlighted in the report that warrants specific consideration, and where the officer recommendation represents a more material departure from the current policy, and that relates to the utilities property category. In brief, the 2025 revaluation resulted in significant valuation changes within the utilities category, with flow-on implications for ratepayers in that property group. Overall, the capital value of combined utilities properties increased by more than 140% in that group, and that further masks significant changes in relative valuations. So once you get under the hood of that ratings category, what you see is that water network properties increased in value by 234% on average, while non-water properties increased by just 6%. Under the current policy, the utilities category overall is insulated from those large valuation increases because utilities' share of general rates is fixed at 5.6%. However, within the category, the relative valuation changes would see water utility properties facing a 37% increase in general rates on average, while non-water utility properties would see an absolute rates reduction by 57% on average. Now, we've had a closer look at what's underlying those valuation changes, and there isn't a simple answer to that. There are a complex range of factors that are impacting on those valuation changes. But there is good reason to believe that there is a significant one-off element to those increases because the rates of increase far outstrip the available price indices for capital goods, and because some of the changes relate to methodological and data quality improvements. For that reason, we believe there's an argument for adjusting the rating approach to achieve a more balanced rate of rating impacts. And Appendix 3 of the paper considers several alternative options, which we've summarised on the following slide, and I'm happy to step through those in more detail if you wish. Council Office's recommendation is option 3 in Table 2 of Appendix 3 of the paper, and that option would see Council look through the relative valuation changes by creating a new separate water utilities category and fixing the relative contributions to general rates by water and non-water utility properties at their 2025-26 levels. So that approach would see both water and non-water utility properties facing a similar rates increase to the residential and commercial central rating categories. So happy to talk through in more detail the options if that's something that Council wishes.
New time for questions. Councillor Parkin.
Through you, Chair. So does that significant change reflect a potential historic underinvestment or undervaluation of that particular asset, thinking particularly the water assets?
No, I don't think the main driver is one of undervaluation. There's quite a complex process involved in determining the rating valuations, and one of the issues here is there was a change in valuer as well as part of this sort of process. There are some quite substantial methodological differences. So as well as taking market prices into account, like unit costs of undertaking construction work, a big determinant of the value is the quality of asset information, and there were quite substantial changes in terms of how things like the depth of assets were taken into account, and even the sort of the comprehensive understanding of the asset. So a better understanding of the asset base has been quite a significant contributor to that increase. It's not, you can't really explain it by differences in investment between one year and the next.
Councillor Woods.
You might have answered my question with a comment that you don't think we're going to see another massive change like that within this category next revaluation, but just exploring the differences between option 3 and option 4, would it be wrong to characterise option 3 as something as a stopgap measure because, in another 3 years' time, when there is another 3-year revaluation, we might be confronting a similar problem, or is that a mischaracterisation?
I think there are possibly some alternative options that could be considered in the longer term. So, one thing to note is that there are actually only 17 properties in the utilities property category, and there's a very wide dispersion of property values and asset types in there. So as a category, it could be susceptible to volatility through future relative valuation changes, and in fact many councils don't have a separate utilities property category for that reason. So that's something to consider perhaps in the longer term. So in that sense, it could be considered a stopgap. It's taking the view that there is a large one-off element to this, and there isn't really any relationship, I'd suggest, between those valuation changes and any underlying services that council is providing to those properties. So that's sort of the logic, if you like, underpinning that option.
Councillor Dyer.
Thank you. Just want to clarify regarding the comments you made around the targeted rates on the water. Do our targeted rates currently fully cover all Three Waters expenditure? I thought there was some element of general rates funding towards Three Waters.
So no, they don't. So we do have, not general rates per se, but debt that's basically paid back through general rates.
So if that's being removed, I understand you've done the analysis on stormwater, which does have some impact. Has there been some analysis on the general rate impact to removing the debt repayments on other Three Waters assets?
So the collection of rates to repay debt should be reflected in the debt transfer arrangements between the council and Te Ākiwai. So what we were exploring through stormwater was more the incidence of the collection of stormwater services was tilted towards commercial properties because of the higher impervious land area. So we're not seeing the same issue in relation to water supply or wastewater.
But currently commercial ratepayers pay a water per litre of water they use while also paying a component of the general rate. I would have thought there would have been something there where there maybe, has that analysis been done, that removing that charge, removing the general rate component, what change that would actually have on the other side, or just for stormwater?
Specifically on the incidence between the residential and the commercial, we haven't looked at that in detail, no. I believe the targeted rates represent the lion's share of that.
No more questions. I'd ask Kate to put the recommendations, motion up. Sorry, move the motion. Page 294, recommendations 1 to 9. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Is there any debate? Councillor Brady.
Thank you. I've previously raised the issue of the 60% split that we're currently still adopting and seemingly rolling over again now. Previously, the explanation has been once water comes off our books, there will be significant changes to how we fund those assets, and that will be the time to revisit that 60% split to see whether it's still fit for purpose. It was set in 2009, 17 years ago. That 60% was correct based on the population of commercial and residential ratepayers then. 17 years later, our city has changed, and it may well be we'll get to the same answer, but I would really like to see that analysis done. So I'd like to move an additional motion that as part of our long-term plan process, I've just seen it through DK, as part of our long-term plan process, once there is more certainty about the impacts of the removal of Three Waters provisions, a more thorough analysis is completed on the 60-40% split. Noting that there isn't time to do it for this annual plan, and there'll be more certainty once the debt's actually removed. Could do, don't know, but we could stagger it. It's about what's fair.
In relation to that recommendation, I mean, this is the analysis for now, but we would automatically do a significant analysis as part of the next work from the run-up to the LTP, which would incorporate what you've just said.
Yeah, I would just like it really explicitly, because previously I thought that work was going to happen in time once Te Ākiwai was off our books, which is this moment, but it sounds like that work hasn't been done other than the stormwater component, which does show that the 60% split isn't right, albeit a very small number, but I imagine once we look at those other numbers, there could be possibly some impact, and then it's a call for us to decide how we do that. It's still a judgment call at the end of the day once you've done that part 1 analysis, but I just like it really explicitly that we are going to look at the 60% split that was set 17 years ago as part of this next process as we start the long-term plan.
Councillor Mitchell.
Just a comment rather than anything else. You know, that target was set a long time ago. However, this policy is reviewed thoroughly as part of every long-term plan process, and that would happen automatically anyway. So it's wrong to suggest that it hasn't been looked at since it was set all those years ago. So, I mean, I'm quite comfortable that that work will be done as usual. I can see no issue with a recommendation noting that that work will be done as part of our long-term plan review of the finance policy as usual. Yeah.
Take him.
Do I hear that there's an additional recommendation that as part of the preparations for the long-term plan, there is a thorough review of the differential, recognising the change in ownership of water assets? I think that's the additional recommendation I just heard from the floor. Yeah, people were asking what it was.
So that becomes recommendation 10.
Oh, no, I have no additional recommendation to make. I was just commenting that, you know.
We're going to do it anyway.
It's his,
We're going to do it
his
anyway.
recommendation is on the floor.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for it to be in those words or as summarised by the Chief Executive. My point was that this work does happen anyway, and we could just note that the work will happen rather than requesting it to happen, knowing that it will happen anyway.
Well, that's on you now, Councillor Dyer. We've had assurances that the work's going to be done in spite of. Are you happy to continue or what?
Yeah, I mean, I've moved the motion. I'm happy for it to be merged in with the other recommendations. If it's happening anyway, then I can't see any issues with including it.
Do we need a seconder for that additional motion? Councillor Young, second. Do we need a vote on that? All those in favour? Oh, yeah. Okay, why don't we'll do 1 to 9 first. Hmm? Can we put them all together, Kate? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. We'll put them all together 1 to 10. And Councillor Mitchell seconds both. Or the new. Okay. Is that easier? Okay, is there any debate? Okay, now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against say no. Declare the motion carried. 10-minute recess. 12 o'clock. Just before we get started, just a process thing, we have to open a council meeting at 12. We had intended, or we intend to acknowledge and pay tribute to Mayor Terrace and Henny Luke, and then we'll go back to the strategy. Okay, that's the kia ora everybody. Welcome to today's Kaunihira o Te Awa Kairangi Council meeting. This is the formal opening. We won't go through the emergency procedures or the opening karakia. We have already done that. I just want to take a moment, please, to acknowledge and pay tribute to the passing of Mayor John Terrace, and former Member of Parliament, of course, and kuia from Waifatu, Henny Luke, two significant leaders, contributed immensely to our city and our nation with the roles, leadership and examples that they have set. Many of us that are in attendance today attended both the funeral of Mayor Terrace and the tangi of Henny Luke at Waifatu. Can I ask that we all just stand for a moment, please, and then Waiata Wednesday we'll sing a waiata to acknowledge and recognise and pay tribute to their life.
Akera kirunga tararua Mai ngā whakahi, mai ngā whakarongo kōrero E au erere nei, e au wakairangi E au arangatira, e au atuku iho au Tino ia ngā waiora Rupuhia ngā uara, e mana aki, e kotaritanga. Takai ana here, hei here tā kairangi. Ko te awa kairangi, e re re ne. Takai ana here, hei here tā kairangi. Ko te awa kairangi, e re re ne. Ko te awa kairangi, e re re ne. Ria wehi.
Ngā mihi. Nō reira, moi mai rā, moi mai rā. So now we're adjourning our council meeting and going back to our strategy meeting. Do we need time for public exclusion? No, it's not. We're good. So we're to proposed fees for commercial dog walkers. The next item on page 364 of the agenda. Justin Roberts. Good afternoon, Justin.
Justin, hopefully be with us shortly. Happy to take the paper as read, and if there are any questions, having recently taken over this part of the business, I can do my best to answer them, and then hopefully Justin will join us.
No questions? I'm happy to move the motion. Recommendations 1 to 4. Deputy Mayor Brown, second. Yeah. Do you want them on screen or we've seen them? Is there any debate? Okay, I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Declare the motion carried. Thank you, everybody. We now move into public excluded.